So when I was invited to come to Riga, which I'm very pleased to make the trip, it's a absolutely wonderful country, and I've had some time to walk around, which is amazing, and it's been very beautiful here. They asked me to talk about whether social media can be useful in C2 or command and control. And having been out of the Department of Defence now for 4 years, a lot's changed in that space in terms of social media. 1 year in social media, as I think Michael said before, things change exponentially. So I wanted to take you through a little look at C2, but also push you forward to perhaps some new ways of thinking. Because I think what we have to do is define what is useful and within what context when we're talking about social media and who we're actually talking to. Does most people, when they think about C2, are you know, hands up, do you think it's an internal audience we're talking to? External audience? Nobody wants to put their hands up? My initial thought was, you know, we're kind of talking to an internal audience. Are our soldiers and airmen and women and sailors going to be taking advice, directions, orders on social media? Are we using that as a communications tool to convey some of that important information? But then how do we extend that out to our external audiences and how we need to communicate with them in different regions, different operations, and that kind of thing? So usefulness and context becomes really, really important. The problem with C2 is largely we use it as a broadcast mentality. So we talk because we think everybody thinks that's really important and you must listen to what I'm saying, rather than going, well, hang on a minute, do you even care what I'm talking about? So in a social media sense, we can't really say that broadcast mentality commands or controls anybody. People may listen, they may not, they may tune out after 3 seconds of the video, they may watch the whole thing. We can go into our data and have a look at that. And the second point is our social networks are by nature crowd-sourced news feeds. So whether what I'm saying actually appears in your news feed is an entirely different question. It may not turn up, it may turn up in 3 days, it may turn up, you know, in a week. That's not relevant and timely for us in a C2 environment. The other issue obviously is, of course, is it's open to manipulation. There's been some discussion around bots. Very, very easily to amplify stories and news on social media to get it in front of eyeballs, but that doesn't mean that's accurate, factual and correct. So we've got some challenges around there that could actively sort of mitigate the authority around, you know, command and control structures. And the third point is, you know, we don't see command or leadership usually in the military as a democratic or a negotiation process. It's sort of a one-way broadcast communication. So how do we then bring being social into that equation? It's quite difficult to change your language when you're talking to someone, to think about how we're going to expand that mode of communication on that network and who else is going to see it. There's a whole range of challenges involved when we think about social media and C2. And the point here, when we cross from internal to external audiences, is that trust in both those audiences becomes the critical juncture. I often say trust is the currency of social media. If people don't trust you, doesn't matter what you say, it's going to have very little effect. They're not going to change how they feel about you. They're not going to change their actions. They're not going to, you know, change their perceptions. So we really need trustpreneurs within the military space to start building that trust. The first point, really, really easy. Does what you're doing match what you're saying? When people see you talking, and you know, we're really great as giant bureaucracies about talking about all the great things we're going to do, but are we actually closing that feedback loop and showing people what we're doing? We've talked about it, and hey, here's a video of us out there actually doing it. Because at that doing point, people actually go, oh, that's right, they did talk about building that school or doing that operation, and now I can see them doing it. And because you've closed that trust loop, your trust factor increases a little bit. So every time you do say you're going to do something and then go and do it, it's like putting money into your trust bank. And you just keep getting more and more coins in that trust bank. So people over time automatically begin to trust you because you're a person or an organisation that does exactly what you say you're going to do. There's no surprises, there's no conspiracy. You said you're going to do this and that's what you did, and you proved it to people through your social content. The second point is mature social media capabilities. Listen. And listen is really, really important. And Eve touched on this before. You know, you've got your percentages there. If you're not listening to people, you're telling them what's really important to them, or really important to you, sorry, but what's really important to them. Are you actually addressing their concerns, their worries, their beliefs? You know, what is it that is important to them that would make them listen? And sometimes those are really hard conversations that people are really reluctant to start. The challenge is to have those meaningful conversations and to start them. And the third point around mature social media is to deploy those strategic master narratives. You know, I come from a countering violent extremism background, so there is Islamic extremist master narratives that we can tap into. Any audience that you want to talk to will have their own culture, their own different demographics, their psychographics. And within those different portions of your very traditional PR kind of communications data sets, you can understand what those people are really going to be clued into. We saw that happen, you know, in Afghanistan. We've seen it happen in different countries around the world, not only in conflict, but even in peace activities like, you know, donation of blood and all those kind of sort of more routine things that we've seen governments do. But tapping into those cultural and belief systems that underpin the very core of our audiences makes those master narratives effective. So the best approach for social media is not C2, it's actually C4I. So we're taking the command and control, we're adding in communication, which is really important in social media, computers and intelligence. And when I talk about intelligence, I'm not talking hardcore intello stuff. I'm talking about knowing and understanding your audiences. Do some research to understand your audience. The better you understand your audience, what makes them tick, what worries them, what keeps them up at night, what their major concerns are, the better and the more effective your communications can be tailored for them. Listening, you know, and talking about those concerns builds trust. You know, we see a lot of politicians fall into the trap of thinking, well, I'm a politician, I'm really important, whatever I say, you will listen to. So we have this consistent broadcast, talk at you thing. Whereas if they took the time to listen to what their constituency was talking about, what were their concerns about, if they're talking about, you know, environmental issues because that's really important to them personally, rather than, you know, people in their electorate are desperately unemployed and looking for jobs or education opportunities, there's a huge mismatch in those two narratives. So if they take the time to listen and understand what's important to the people in that electorate, they can build rapport and trust because it shows that you're actually tuning in to the people you're meant to be talking to. And talking with, rather than talking at. And of course, the computer element of C4I. Everyone in this room has probably got 2 or 3 smart devices and a laptop with them. We're a hyper-connected society. And that can be leveraged to understand, again, your terrain or your environment. How does your audience communicate? You know, if we look at Western Africa, it's very WhatsApp-based. If we look at Singapore and Australia, it's very Facebook-based, very YouTube-based. Europe and America are far more Twitter-centric than down in the Asia-Pacific, for example. So know where your audience is and have those conversations that matter in those places, because you're understanding where your audience is, not where you want to be, where they actually are having those conversations. And they'll have those conversations with or without you if you're not there. So why is this really, really important? Knowing your audiences, understanding, doing the C4 approach to social media, quite simple, is because social media is really not about technology at all. Take the technology out of the picture. Social media is about sociology, psychology, and I'd add anthropology in there as well. It's fundamentally about people. Technology makes up such a small portion. It's just the conduit. It's just how we communicate. But to be able to communicate effectively, we fundamentally need to understand the sociology, the psychology, and the anthropological elements of our audiences and talk about the things that are important to them. So social media, think C4I, and I will leave it there.
Nicole, thank you very much indeed.